My goodness, this is insane. I have got the RTX5090. For those of you that have been following along with my little news feeds and my little mini updates over the last couple of weeks, you know what's going on. But for those of you that don't, like, subscribe, share these videos with all your crazy friends, because this is probably the most epic video I will have made to date, apart from maybe being in the sim rig and doing something stupid. Anyway, RTX5090, I know what you're thinking. How did I manage to get this? And they are just in such short supply. And I think the very first thing we need to touch on is a massive, massive thank you to Steve from Hardware Unboxed. Can you believe it? I reached out to Steve after an absolute dismal launch. I was one of those billions of people around the world, maybe multi-billions of people around the world, that I stayed up late. I had multiple pages open. I was clicking refresh and smashing the F5 key and doing everything I could, only to have all of these cards pop up and immediately be out of stock. Now, I knew something was wrong. So I reached out to a couple of hardware suppliers that I deal with in the industry, and they said the same thing. Pete, we had absolutely no stock. We've got a couple of 5080s and we've got a few more of them trickling in, but there's just no stock, especially here in Australia. It was pretty much zero stock. It was madness. So I was really bummed. I stayed up late. I tried to get a card so that I can bring this content to you, my audience, so that we can actually have a look at the comparisons, because in our niche of a niche of a niche, we're doing simulators, we're doing VR. Even if we're doing stand-up VR and we're using the Quest 3, we're pushing our headsets to the absolute extreme. And for us, we're not worried about 4K. We're gaming at 8K plus. In some cases, we're gaming at like 12 and 16K. It's madness. So these cards for us can really make a huge difference. For the average gamer, they just don't matter. There's really no use case for you to have a 5090, let's face it, unless you're running triple 4K monitors, unless you're doing maybe real heavy workflow stuff where you're wanting to render things, or if you're VR. They are the use cases for this crazy card. So I reached out to Steve from Hardware Unboxed. He's a fellow Aussie. I'm in Perth. He's over east, other side of Australia, basically. And I told him, mate, I'm super bummed out. I've got a small channel. This is what I do. Check out the simulator. I'd love to have you over here at some time. And gosh, who knows, maybe we can put a little poll up and see who wants to have Steve come over here and jump in this crazy sim rig and have a go. I reached out and Steve immediately responded. How nice. Doesn't know me from a bar of soap, a fellow Aussie. I've got a YouTube channel. We're doing pretty, I guess, unique content, VR, sim rigs. It's pretty specialized stuff. And he was kind enough to send me the RTX5090 Suprim OC that he's only just reviewed a couple of weeks ago. Now, I'm sure everyone on this channel that's watching this video has already heard of Hardware Unboxed. Steve and Tim, those guys are legends. Been watching their channel for years, love their content. They do some of the most epic, like 50, 60 game benchmarks. I mean, Steve must stay up all hours doing that stuff. But a massive thank you, because they reached out, said yes, sent this card over to me. It arrived yesterday. And I'm just so grateful, so humbled that they've done this for the channel. And this is amazing because they're helping our community so that we can bring this content to everyone. Now, I get it. These cards are in short supply. They're almost non-existent. But at least we can be bringing the content out based on whether or not it's a worthy upgrade and should you actually be worried about trying to get it. I also want to give another shout out to Omniwhatever. Now, again, links to all these people's videos and stuff. I'll put a link to Steve from Hardware Unboxed's video now, and I'll put a link to Omniwhatever's video that he's also done, because he got his hands on a 5090 as well. And I'll put a link to his video here now. They will also be in the description. And the link to Steve's video will be for the Suprim, so you can check out the review that he did on this card. My video now is not going to be a review on this per se. Mine is going to be about what difference is it going to make for us in VR and in our sim rigs when we're pushing the limits in these games. But Omniwhatever's video is actually really important. The reason for that is he's done the deep dive into almost looking at the advancements in headsets and what we're going to need out of resolution. Now, because he was having issues with the Pimax Crystal getting that working, I'm hopeful that I'm going to be able to get mine working. Reached out to my channel partner. I've looked on the internet. I've looked on the Discord, so they're aware of it, but also the Varo Aero, let's not forget. So hopefully we're going to have some resolution to that and we'll see what happens. But the reason his video is so important is testing those higher resolutions. So using the PSVR 2 or the PS2 VR, he has actually super sampled the resolution up to those advanced resolutions, like going to the Quest 3, going to the Pimax Crystal. Pimax Crystal Lite is pretty much the same headset. It's just missing the battery pack and some other bits, but it in essence is the same horsepower, same panels, same resolution, same DisplayPort cable. Plus he's also super sampled it all the way up to headsets like the new to be released Pimax Crystal Super. And that's important because we can at least then determine, is this card going to help us be future-proofed for those new headsets coming out, or do we skip this generation altogether? Now, the cat out of the bag, he's already established that there is some insane results to be had with this card. And where it really starts to shine, I think, is in that VRAM where it's really pushing those higher resolutions. Now, what Omniwhatever has also mentioned in a little post that he put up, but he's also direct messaged me as well, so we've been chatting a little bit about this, is that there have been some frame issues when it comes to the 5090 and possibly the drivers. NVIDIA are apparently aware of this, and again, I'll link you to Omniwhatever's videos on all of this sort of stuff because it's really important. He deep dives into some pretty crazy specs and stats and does some really good stuff in it. Mine is a bit more generalized across the board. Plus, my channel is really dedicated into the simulator stuff, although I love my stand-up VR and my modded games, but I also love my simulators. So DCS, flight simulator, car racing, that stuff's gonna be, we're really gonna scrutinize that stuff heavily because I think that really matters a lot because it's either fast moving or we've got a lot of draw distance happening as opposed to stand-up games. I guess Skyrim's the exception, those kind of games, big open world, but for the most part, certain games are quite linear. It's not as heavy on the resources if that game is designed well. But the other elephant in the room that we need to speak about is the cables melting on the 5090. Now, DeBauer has done some pretty extensive stuff on that, and he's also put a video up. Man, so many videos for people to watch. I'll put a link up in my video here to DeBauer's video, and also Gamers Nexus plus Jay's 2 cents. These guys have all tested these things. They've put heat guns on them to have a look at what the temperatures are at, and it's pretty scary, to be honest. But look, I'm going into this without too much fear. We're going to run this card. I've never had any cable issues, and look, I think it really does come down to a couple of factors. Yes, I do agree with the boffins out there that understand this stuff more than I do. I'm not an electrical engineer or a Sparky by any measure, but people have said that really what we're trying to do through these thin little cables and that little plug is pretty dangerous. So I think the cable is capable of handling this. I think the plug is capable of it, but I think the margin for error is so small that if you haven't seated that cable properly or a pin's just retracted it somewhat, then man, there's all sorts of problems that can happen. So I think the margin for error is just so thin. But something else we need to talk about is the actual plug type. So people are under the impression that the 12 volt high power was then changed to the 12 volt 6x2, no, 2x6. And that's kind of right, but kind of not. And what they're meaning by that is that they've changed the plug from 12 volt high power to 12 volt 2x6. I don't know why I keep saying that. And what that means is it's only the plug on the board that's changed. So if you have got a cable that came with your PSU and it's capable and it's a 12 volt high power, that is perfectly fine because the change is not cable end. The change is on the GPU on that section there. And what they've actually done is shortened a couple of the pins so that, I guess, in theory, if your power cable wiggles out or isn't seated properly, that's going to create a short, which is going to stop it from working or not allow it to draw the power, I'm assuming. I think that draws some speculation around that poor chap whose card's melted. He sent it to DeBauer and he was using a previous 12 volt high power cable that was, yes, from an aftermarket reseller. I'm running a Corsair 1500 watt PSU, so we've got plenty of juice, and mine has got the 12 volt high power cable for it. So, you know, really, I guess if that card and that cable worked with his 4090, it should really have worked with the 5090 as well. Anyway, this channel is not about diving into all that stuff. There's other reviewers out there that are better at talking about all that stuff than me and understand it better. But we're going to get this in the rig. We're going to put it through its paces. My gosh, we've got so much to do. I've got so many games to get through. It is absolutely ridiculous. And massive thanks to Steve from Hardware Unboxed. This would not be possible without the support from those guys reaching out to me, following my email and sending me this graphics card. I am just so humbled. Thank you guys. Let's get this on the bench. We're going to swap out the 4090. We're going to get the 5090 in my rig. I think we'll take this one out to the kitchen and we might even crack a beer for it. I'll show you some footage of the differences of the cards. They don't really look massive in the picture here, but I think that's just because of perspective, but you wait until I get that on the bench and you actually see these cards together. Man, it is crazy. I held this up in the rig for a picture I put online just last night, and this is massive, man. It's crazy. Even Steve said, like, you could do a workout with it, and I'm not kidding. This thing at 3 kilos or 3.2 or 3.1 is absolutely mad. I mean, just look at the size of this thing compared to my hand. It is absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, we've got a 5090. Let's stop mucking around. Let's get her on the bench. Let's get this underway. And don't forget, like and subscribe, share these videos with all your crazy friends. We're going to do this in a 3 or maybe 4-part series because we've got so many videos to get out. We're going to do flight first. We're going to do car racing next. We've got space sims, plus we've got stand-up room scale VR, and then we've got the modded games. So my goodness, let's get into it. And let's test out the 5090 versus the RTX 4090. All right, I've pulled the RTX 4090 Gigabyte Gaming OC out of my case. I'm using one of the vertical GPU mounts. Makes it a bit easier because you can actually install all that, get it right, and then actually install that into the case. And then behind it, we've got the Suprim. And I mean, have a look at the difference of this thing. It's pretty significant. And the weight factor here is crazy. Man, I just can't believe the weight difference. That is, yeah, that is a fair bit. And I'll turn them on their side just so you can actually see the width of them. Width is similar, maybe a little bit wider. Yeah, a little bit wider. I think the fan shroud's on the Suprim to the gaming OC, but length like this of the length of the cards, that's when you can really notice that there has been an increase there. It's slight, but it's slightly wider, slightly longer, and slightly taller. Yeah, gosh, even the height of the card. So let's spin that around and then have a look at them like that. So you really get the perspective of how much bigger that card is, and just the weight. The weight is really blowing me away. I mean, we've got a metal backplate here, probably adding further support to it, but that is significant in volume and weight. Let's get it into the riser, into the case, and then back in the room. Wow, what a journey. So the graphics card is in and she is back up on the shelf and running, but I'm wearing a different shirt, and this is the second day from that first lot of footage. I have spent a very long period of time in this room, and I'm surprised my wife is still with me. This has been mad. There are definite driver problems going on. This is reminiscent of the 4000 series launch or the 4090 back 2 years ago. Man, the Pimax didn't work then. The Varo Aero was having issues. It was just a dog's breakfast until they finally got the drivers up to speed. I'm certain they'll do the same again, but let's talk about the problems real quick. So drivers, the first set of drivers, which were the first launched drivers for the 5000 series, initially I thought were working well. Ran a whole heap of tests, and then we started having crash to desktop. We started having all sorts of posting issues. So swapped back to the 4090, did some motherboard tests, did some hard drive tests, ran DSIM repairs on Windows, all sorts of stuff, and everything was squeaky clean. Put the 5090 back in, everything seemed good, started having some problems again. And I'm constantly repeating these tests because I need to validate the results to make sure I'm not just spitting something out that was an anomaly and was either underperforming, or I don't know if it would necessarily overperform, but to make sure the results were correct. Anyway, they released a hotfix on the 4th of February. I tried that. I thought that had fixed it. Same problems again. Anyway, yesterday afternoon while I was testing, they've released a new driver. Can you believe it? We've had 3 lots of drivers so far. Tried that one, thought we were golden. Man, we were so far through the tests and then started having some problems again. Anyway, I've managed to capture what I am considering reliable results with what we've got at the moment. You're going to see footage from the Quest 3, but the Pimax Crystal I'm not showing you the footage of. You're going to see the benchmarks. The reason for that is because I've got to use screen recording software to capture the Pimax Crystal, and that's going to nerf the frames. Yes, it'll be like for like if I use that same capture software for the 4090 and the 5090, but I want you to genuinely see what we're going to get out of the Pimax Crystal Lite or the Pimax Crystal or any high resolution headset like this. Now, the Quest 3 has its own inbuilt hard drive you can record to it, and the frame hit is nominal. I've done some tests with that. It's one frame, if that. It's nominal. It's so tiny, I don't think it's worth writing home about. So you're going to see Quest 3 footage of all the games that we ran the tests in, and then you will see the charts for the Quest 3 and the Pimax at the end. Now, Flight Sim 2020, DX11, DX12. I know some people are going to want to see all of the benchmarks in those different variants. Once we get stability on the drivers, I'll do it. I did do a test and the difference is nominal. We're talking about maybe one frame, in some cases 0.8 of a frame benefit to DirectX 11 in FS2020. So it's just not worth me, potentially sacrificing my marriage over. Anyway, DirectX 12 is looking good. We're doing TAA, and we're doing DLSS quality in Microsoft Flight Simulator and for Flight Sim 2024 as well. Bearing in mind with FS 2024, anything north of 40 frames is golden. Honestly, it is. It's buttery smooth. Things are looking good. If you can get north of 50 frames, man, you are having a really good time. I'm not using synchronous space warp. I'm not using any additional frame generation with the Pimax Crystal. Native resolution for the Quest 3, native resolution for the Pimax Crystal Lite. I've put what those resolutions are per eye on the graphs. Let's get into it. My goodness, I need a cold beer after this. I reckon I need several. RTX4090 versus the 5090, DCS, FS2020, FS2024. Let's go. Man, I reckon the frame increase in DCS is pretty damn significant. That is the difference between having a good time in that game or it being a bit of a stuttery mess when the action kicks off. Especially with the Pimax Crystal, being able to lean on that resolution for that crystal sharp clarity. The colours absolutely pop in that headset. It is just amazing, especially with DLSS quality. My gosh, I know people are bagging that out. Trust me, if you haven't tried it, get it working. It looks absolutely epic. It's leaning on that Pimax Crystal so good and giving us a really good, high, solid frame rate. It looks amazing. I love where the software's going. Man, it is absolutely game-changing. And speaking of epic software, we're about to see Flight Sim 2020, 2024, and today's sponsor is Say Intentions AI. AI ATC for the FS series and X-Plane. It is absolutely banging. I never fly in the sim rig without it. Being able to radio ATC, get what squawk you're on, get handoff, get runway departure. It is absolutely wild. If you're a beginner to flight sims, this is such an incredible way to add to that immersion. But if you're an experienced sim pilot, this is going to be right up your alley. This software is incredible what it can do to add to the realism in game. Plus, they've got a 24-hour free trial. You can download the software, get it all set up, and it starts the timer from your very first transmission. You can even kick back and have a listen to other people's chatter first and just check it out and see what you think. Say Intentions AI ATC for Flight Sim 2020, 2024 and the X-Plane series. It is a no-brainer. Check it out. Links in the description. Now, let's get into the benchmarks for FS 2020, 2024, 4090 versus 5090. there you have it. Pretty interesting results. I think this graphics card really wants high resolution, as Omniwhatever had shown. As soon as you start leaning on that resolution really hard, the 5090 really sings. Some of the results are pretty cool. Some of the results are a bit interesting. So that was part one of a multi-part series that I'm doing. Coming up next is going to be the car simulation stuff. We've got EAWRC, we've got PC2, we've got a Assetto Corsa Evo, Assetto Corsa on Shotoko Motorway. Plus we've also got stand-up VR, Skyrim, Contractors. I've got a whole heap of games. I'm even going to do Iron Rebellion, which is like a MechWarrior style native VR game. It's absolutely wild. Plus we've also got the UE VR modded games. Dakar Rally, that thing is absolutely crazy in the motion rig, although I won't be doing the benchmarking in the motion rig. So yeah, we've got some really cool stuff coming. Stand by, stay tuned. I'll see you in the next video.